The 659th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled.
Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play. Stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love. Top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys here on a Sunday night here to get you ready for Carolina and Syracuse. That game will come your way on Monday night, 7 p.m. on ESPN from the Smith Center. Carolina will look to win their 4th straight game ahead of next Saturday's home date with the Duke Blue Devils. We'll tell you everything you need to know about Syracuse. Look at this game from Carolina's perspective. Discuss why Carolina has struggled in the game before the Duke game here recently before we give our keys to pulling out a much-needed victory at home. But we start every edition of the pod, as we always do, with the pod thought of the day. We go to Dale Carnegie for that pod thought. That thought is, quote, "Don't be afraid to give your best to what seemingly are small jobs. If you do the little jobs well, the big ones will tend to take care of themselves," end quote. I think this is a great way to kind of piggyback off of, Hubert Davis's message to his team on Friday, where he referenced how hard it is to play at Carolina, how hard it is to win at Carolina. But if you do win here, it changes your life in the short term. It changes your life in the long term. And so, the little things in basketball, what do those look like? Those are diving on the floor for loose balls. It's boxing out. It's running back on defense. It's making that communication at the ball screen. It's closing out on a perimeter shooter. It's setting a good ball screen, on and on and on. And I think we've seen so far this season that when Carolina plays fundamental basketball and they take care of the little things, then the big things take care of themselves. And what are the big things when you do the little things? The big things are shot making in the scoreboard. And it feels like whenever Carolina has done the little things, the big things take care of themselves, and Carolina scores a lot of points, and they usually win basketball games, which make you and I both very happy.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a lot so far this year, the specialty stats, that area that Carolina really needs to take care of. And you saw it in the game against Georgia Tech. Carolina took care of that area, and that really was the difference in the game. And so I think that's what your message has to be going into this game against Syracuse, is come out and really control those specialty areas once again. And there's a good chance that you're going to be able to pull out this victory. It's just doing the small things, creating those turnovers, finishing those second chance opportunities, finishing the points off of the turnovers that you end up creating. Those are the things that can really make a difference in a game, especially when you're playing against these types of teams that Carolina is going up against now. It can be the difference between being in a battle the entire way and being in a game where you're, comfortably in the lead. You don't necessarily have to worry about it, and putting these types of opponents away early. So hopefully that's the mindset that Carolina is taking going into this game. You could even look at this for, that quote as, basically this is the small thing that Carolina has to take care of before the big thing that is on the table against Duke. This is one of those teams that you have to be able to take care of if you're going to beat a team like Duke when it's all said and done next week or over the weekend. And so hopefully that's, what Carolina is looking at this as an opportunity to come out, get themselves completely ready for that game against Duke, and pick up another nice home victory over a team that that they are superior to.
Let's set the scene for the matchup with Syracuse. Carolina is 18-7 all-time against the Orange, and they are perfect 7-0 at home in Chapel Hill. All of those games have been played in the Dean Dome. You look at this year's version of the Orange, they bring with them just a 13-9 record overall. They're 4-5 in the league. Red Autry's having to, answer phone calls on his radio show about who's going to be his replacement, because the fan base is fed up with the lack of success the program has experienced since they transitioned to him after moving on from the legendary Jim Boeheim. They're 2-2 in true road games. Their wins have come at Georgia Tech and Pitt. Their losses have come to Boston College and NC State. They have 3 players that currently average double-figure scoring, led by Donnie Freeman with his 18.2 points per game, 7.3 rebounds, 1.4 assists. He is shooting 50% from the field and 33% from three, but he's only played in 13 games so far this year. Guy you probably know the most about when it comes to Syracuse is J.J. Starling, the former 5-star prospect. Averages 12 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He shoots 45% from the field and 33% from three. And then Nate Kings is their last guy to average double figures in scoring. He averages 11 points per game, 3.8 rebounds, 1.2 assists. He is shooting 48% from the field, 37% from three. The Orange lead the ACC in blocks at 6 per game, and their top 5 in points per game allowed. They allow just 70 points per contest. Their efficiency numbers, their advanced metrics, kind of what you expect the team that's got the record that Syracuse has. They're 70th overall in KenPom. They have the number 82 offense with 115.1. They got the number 69 defense at 103.3, and they're 73rd in the net on the night of recording. And they have not had the season that they wanted to have. This was pretty much a make or break year, it feels like, for their head coach. They bring in the son of Carmelo Anthony, who was a pretty highly talented prospect coming out of high school. And he's had some moments, but he's not had the impact that his dad had when he led Syracuse to the national championship as a freshman back in 2003. To be frank with you, this was a team that, after the Players era, where they lost 3 games but were very competitive, I thought they were maybe ready to take that next step. And they were kind of in that position too. A few weeks ago, they get a bad road loss at Boston College, kind of derails whatever kind of momentum they were trying to build this season. So, look, they'll be coming into Chapel Hill looking to get a win to salvage what's becoming yet another lost season for that proud program. And, Carolina, lost to Syracuse 2 years ago. They were able to beat them last year up in the JMA Wireless Dome. But as we know, there are no off nights in this year's ACC. Carolina's got to be ready to play for 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that early in the season, people thought really had a chance to be pretty decent. I mean, as you said, they went to the Players era. They competed in every game out there. It felt like, for the most part, they were going to be one of those teams that would at least be stingy, and especially after they beat number 13 Tennessee. Granted, that game was at home, but still a lot of people thought, man, this has a chance to be a really good basketball team. This has not panned out the way that they thought since that point. A loss to Hofstra was really what derailed their entire season. And since that point, it just has not gone well for them. They had a stretch where they won 3 straight in conference play. But that was against Georgia Tech, Pittsburgh, and Florida State. And they have since come back to earth by losing to Boston College, Virginia Tech, Miami, and then NC State. And also the game against Notre Dame over the weekend. And so this is a team that has really just completely fallen apart. You're hoping if you're Carolina that, you can maybe get this, that you can maybe exploit some of the things that have really challenged them for most of the season, especially on the offensive end of the floor. Just not a great offensive team. J.J. Starling for most of the year hasn't exactly been great. Had 21 in the game against Notre Dame, so turned it back a little bit to look more like the player that we have seen at certain times in his time at Syracuse and his time at Notre Dame. Donnie Freeman is a guy that's going to test Carolina a little bit, but he's been on and off the floor for them. That's been the thing for him, is that the injuries have really hurt him. The good news is that he is back. For Syracuse, the good news for Syracuse, at least, is that he is back. He is playing for them, but at the same time, there's not really a lot of scoring balance around him. So this is a team that Carolina should be able to take advantage of. But as you said, this is a team that challenged Clemson earlier on in conference play. And if Carolina's not careful, they could be in a challenging game here against this Syracuse team because of how good the Orange are defensively.
Gotta say, man, kudos to you for powering through as your dog is losing her absolute mind there in the background. I don't know who Willow saw, who Willow heard. She may very well heard me because she's not a big fan of mine. But good job by you being able to make all those great points while not losing stride with all the distractions in the background. Me, on the other hand, I'd be muting my mic and telling my dogs very politely they need to shut up, or something bad is going to happen to them. Like I'm not going to feed them for the night. Or something like that. So good job by you. That's the kind of perseverance we like to see out of our podcast hosts. When you do the little things, even we can achieve the big things as a podcast. Look at this game from Carolina's perspective. Here come the Heels with a 17-4 record. They've won 3 in a row, and they're 5-3 in the league. Carolina, as you know, perfect at home. They're 12-0 at home in the Smith Center. And after Saturday's win at Georgia Tech, they're now back to having 4 players averaging double figures, led by Caleb Wilson in his 20 points per game, 9.9 rebounds, 2.9 assists. He is shooting 59% from the field and 26% from 3. Henry Vassar is their second leading scorer, 16.8 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. He's still shooting a ridiculous 62% from the field and 46% from 3. Then you have Seth Trimble, 14.5 points, 4.1 rebounds, 2.9 assists. He is shooting 49% from the field and 34% from 3. And then Luka Bogovac is the last guy to, 34% from 3. Then Luka Bogovac, the last guy to average double figures. He averages 10 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, 2.6 assists. He is shooting 41% from the field and 33% from behind the three-point line. Carolina is top 5 in the ACC in field goal percentage. The Heels are shooting roughly 48% from the field. They're top 5 in rebounds. They average 40 rebounds per game. Carolina's KenPom rankings, much better than Syracuse's. Carolina is 29th overall in KenPom. They have the number 18 offense at 123.6. The number 53 defense at 102.1. So they did climb up a few spots after the majority of this weekend's results. And their net ranking it did improve from where they were going into yesterday. They are 25th overall in the net. They're 4-3 right now in quad 1, 1-1 in quad 2, 12-0 in quad 3, and quad 4 combined. one thing we got to talk about is what we got to talk about before every Duke game. But, I saw the article Inside Carolina put up, and it kind of made me remember that Carolina has struggled in this instance the last handful of years, and that is losing the midweek game before the first Duke game. It feels like when they get to the second Duke game, they really have found their stride. Whatever it is, they don't necessarily struggle as much going into that one as they do with this one with losses in three straight contests. If Carolina were to lose tomorrow, it would hurt you from a lot of different reasons. First, it would be a bad loss. It would make you now no longer undefeated at home, and at 5-4 in the league, with the way some other teams are starting to round into form, like top four could really start to come into question, knowing some of the tougher games you still have to play down the back half of the season. You got to play Duke twice. You got to go to State. You got to play Clemson. You got to play Miami, among other programs. So where's our trust level at with this group? Because even as fans, like it's hard for me. Like, we got on the podcast, and what I tell you, it's Duke week, baby. Well, technically it's not. We got to beat Syracuse first. We got to get through Syracuse. We start we'll be on the air tomorrow morning at WFNZ. My guys promoted the week as UNC Duke coverage technically begins tomorrow, even though both teams have a game to play before we get to the game. It's human nature. It's the greatest rivalry in sports. It feels like Duke Carolina because they're both inside the top 20. They've got two great freshmen, on and on and on. But there's a game that has to be played before we get to that one. Where's our trust level at with this group to not poop the bed, if you will, against the Syracuse team tomorrow that, quite frankly, they should beat and beat rather easily?
Yeah, it should be pretty high. Especially coming off of the game that you just played. You would have thought if you were going to lose a game out of these two, that it would more than likely be the game that Carolina had on Saturday. Now, if you look at it, Georgia Tech is a worse team than Syracuse. So maybe Syracuse is a team that challenges them a little bit more in certain areas. Maybe this is a team that, can find some sort of stride offensively. We've seen J.J. Starling be a guy that's hurt Carolina at certain times in his career. But I think the trust levels should be pretty high. This team is starting to find its stride. It feels like coming off of that game against Virginia, Carolina really has turned things back in the right direction. I think when you've got Caleb Wilson and Henry Vassar as maybe the best front court duo in all of the country at this point, I think there's no maybe about it. They are the best front court duo in the entire country. But you've also got Luka Bogovac starting to play the way that we thought he was capable of playing to go along with what Seth Trimble is doing. I think it's time to start believing that Carolina is going to be able to at least take care of these types of opponents. This is a quad 3 opponent at home. Carolina has done a great job of playing teams so far in the Smith Center this year and playing the way that they're supposed to for the most part. There's been some games that they were, they allowed teams to get back into the game late. But how many games have you really felt have been nail biters in the Smith Center for Carolina that weren't supposed to be nail biters? There haven't been many. So I think there is reason to trust that Carolina, with this game being at home, the last 2 years, you look at the game that they played prior to the first Duke game, both of them were on the road that Carolina ends up losing in close fashion. So this one's going to be a little bit different because it's going to be at home. I think Carolina should be trusted to take care of business in this game because of that.
I think that's what makes it easier to believe with this group, right? It's just there's no denying, even after back-to-back road wins, Carolina's different at home. There's a different intensity from them, a different focus. And a big reason why is because the crowds have been sensational. And we expect, even with the weather tomorrow, for there to be, 18, 19,000 plus people in the stands that will be behind a team that is hopefully peaking at the right time. And that's kind of where I am. If this game was on the road, I probably would still be up in the air about this because, after a dominating road win at Georgia Tech, I I don't know if they've completely earned back all the trust that they can win games away from home that they're supposed to win, because we know what happened at Stanford and at Cal. Like that's possible, right? And like, just to give you an update on, that Stanford, what happened with the Stanford loss. Man, that team lost to Florida State over the weekend, man. So like for that moment, like, we were kind of maybe a Stanford a bubble team. You see popping up on Lenardi. Stanford's not going to go to the tournament barring, some sort of comeback here in the second half of conference play. And so if this game was on the road, I'd be worried. But the game's at home, game's in Chapel Hill. Carolina's been really, really good at home. And I expect them to understand that, look, this is a great simulation for tournament play. The NCAA tournament, that is, because you've got the Saturday, Monday turnaround. Look, when you get into the March, it's either Thursday, Saturday, or it's Friday, Sunday. So this will be a great challenge for this group to see how they kind of respond to that. And I think that the challenge is, and the message should be this: hey, we need you to exhaust everything we need you to exhaust to win this game, and then you've got 4 days off before the Duke game. And so while I hate where this falls on the schedule, like I'd much rather play Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, and then go to the Duke game on Saturday. What this does is it does give Carolina, 4 off days to really reset, regroup, recharge, and get ready for what's going to be the most emotional and intense game we've played so far this season. Want to update you just on kind of where our whereabouts are going to be. The hope is that one of us will be in the arena tomorrow night. It very well it could be Anthony. I may have to fill in and do some afternoon hosting for the station. And if that's the case, then we'll send Tony Pags up to Chapel Hill to get to cover the game. If I don't have to do that, then the expectation is for me to be on hand tomorrow night covering this game for you guys. So the hope and the expectation right now is that one of us will be in the building to cover tomorrow's home game against Syracuse. Let's now get to our keys to the game, and then we'll make our predictions and get out of here on a Sunday night as we continue to preview Carolina and Syracuse. That game will come your way on Monday, 7 p.m. from the Smith Center. First thing I wrote down, contain the dribble drive. If there's one thing we know about Syracuse, and when Carolina lost to them a few years ago, they want to penetrate. They want to get inside that foul line extended, but they'll take a lot of contested twos. And look, Carolina 2 years ago got beat by that. Last year they were able to overcome that, but they're going to want to attack the inside. They're going to want to really just break your defense down and make your defense kind of collapse while still looking to kind of attack from inside the 3-point line. Look, at this day and age, if the defense collapses, they're going to watch film. They're going to try to attack Carolina from the outside. But J.J. Starling is a 3-level scorer. He can, score in a variety of different ways. It's kind of odd to see him averaging just 12 points per game. I think he's a much better player than his numbers would suggest so far this season. You got Nathan George, the former Georgia Tech player. That's caused problems for Carolina in the past as well. But this really just comes down to being tough enough and man enough to guard the ball. You guard the action that's happening before it happens, yes, but you got to guard the ball as well and understand this is going to be a team that's going to want to attack with the dribble and not the pass. So we're going to need, Derek Dixon, Seth Trimble, Kyan Evans, Jonathan Powell, those perimeter backcourt players to be the best they've been so far this season.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it from these guys before. That they like to attack the basket and really be able to get to their spots on the floor. And Carolina's got to make sure that they're not able to do that. I mean, you look at this team, they are not a good 3-point shooting team by any stretch of the imagination. None of the categories that you look at, made threes, 3-pointers, made, or 3-point percentage, are they any higher than 223rd in the country? So that's not really their game. They're instead going to want to try to get to the basket with their guards, get to the basket and get the ball to their bigs. And so that's something that Carolina has to be aware of in this game is, Nathan George, J.J. Starling trying to get downhill as often as possible. Carolina's done a much better job of staying in front of these guards here over the last couple of weeks, but this will be a very athletic group that they have to be aware of. And so I think that's going to be one of the main things that Carolina has to do in this game is take away that dribble drive penetration and make them, have to go one-on-one on the interior, make them have to make those entry passes that can potentially be stolen, or those plays, allow some of the guys down low for Carolina to be able to bang with some of their big men on the defensive end of the floor and really show why they have done a decent job in some of those situations of protecting the paint and contesting at the rim. I think that's something that Carolina has got to be able to do a good job of in this game. I think you saw it in the game against on Saturday from Carolina. I think you saw it with Henry Vassar. I thought he was fantastic in that game against Georgia Tech at contesting at the rim. And so hopefully that's going to be the same thing that you see in this game from Vassar, from Caleb Wilson, if guys are able to get to the basket, and hopefully Carolina will be able to limit the amount of points in the paint that Syracuse can put on the board in this game.
The second key to the game I wrote was play strong on the inside. Mainly, that means you got to understand, look, Syracuse leads the ACC in blocks per game. They block 6 shots. So that means even for Wilson, even for Vassar, you're going to have your shot blocked. You're going to have your shot contested. You're going to have your shot rejected. But you can't go in there scared. You can't go in there, hoping to make and not shooting to make, if you will. And so I think this is going to be a really good challenge just for Carolina to handle kind of that physicality and understand that this is a group that whether it's with their strong side or their weak side defense, man, they're going to rally to the ball and they're going to contest shots. And so how are you going to counter that? Or are you going to play strong or keep the ball up high, or are you going to kind of just flip it up there and pray that it goes in? And so I think, you know what you're going to get out of C-Dub, you know what you're going to get out of Big Henry. This is where I look at like when Trimble and when Dixon, when they break down the defense and they get inside the lane, what does their aggressiveness look like? Hubert mentioned in his presser after the Georgia Tech win, it felt like, Seth Trimble wasn't being as aggressive as he wanted him to be attacking the basket. And with his athleticism was getting frustrated because he knows that he can get to the rim and finish a lot better. So is tomorrow going to be a night where when Trimble gets those, he's coming off those pin downs, when he's coming off those curls and he's attacking downhill, well, is he attacking downhill to score? Or is he going to go in there and be soft and lazy with the ball and let it get rejected? Same thing with Derek Dixon. So, this is one where you got to identify that this is a strength of Syracuse. It's one of the few strengths that they have, and understand that there's going to be a shot or two they're going to contest and they're going to reject. But you got to go in there with the mindset that they can't block everything. They're not going to block everything. You got to look to score it. I think tomorrow will be a good test for this backcourt to kind of just see kind of where their mentality is at, because the team you play on Saturday, not that we want to look ahead, but guess what? They do the same thing. They contest a boatload of shots. They don't quit on defensive possessions. And so while we got to get ready, or while we got to take care of Syracuse before we get ready for Duke, this will be a good primer for that Duke game.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think that's one of the main things that you look at with that Duke side on the defensive end of the floor that they do a really good job of is protecting the rim. And so for Carolina, that's going to be one of the main things that you're going to be challenged with in this game. Is your guards being able to finish strong inside along with your big men. There's not really concern that the big men are going to be able to finish strong inside. I mean, Henry, struggled a little bit in that game against Virginia, but for the most part, I think everybody has done a really good job of finishing at the rim when they've had their opportunities. And so hopefully you're going to see something similar in this game. Hopefully you're going to see Seth Trimble be able to finish at the rim, be aggressive. One of the easy ways to do that too is to create some of those turnovers on the other end, win the defensive rebounding battle on the other end and get out in space. And then if you're getting this team in transition, they're not going to be able to handle the up and down pace that you want to play with. And so make some things easy on yourself with the pace of play to avoid having to, play in the half court at all times. That's certainly another way that Carolina can get some of those easy buckets on the inside. But yeah, it's about being strong with the basketball on the interior, not allowing, nearly as many shots to get blocked because you're just not playing strong. Go inside and look to draw some fouls as well. I know that you haven't been a great free throw shooting team, but that's one of the things that you can look to do. Get these guys in some foul trouble and get yourself to the foul line. Now you're going to have to make your foul shots. You did it the other day in the game against Georgia Tech. Are you able to do it again in this game? That's going to be important. And one guy to really make sure you take care of in this game is going to be William Kyle III. That's their leading blocker, 2.7 blocks per game. So that's, one of the best marks in the ACC, one of the better marks in the entire country. I think he might actually lead the ACC, one of the best marks in the entire country. And so that's something that Carolina has to be well aware of going into this game, is his ability to seal the rim. And they have to find ways to really exploit just about everybody else on the floor in that area and not allow him to dominate and drop coverage like you might see him do in some other games this year.
The last key to the game that I wrote down was to dominate the glass for Carolina. This has been the thing whenever they've beaten Syracuse and they've pretty much owned the Orange outside of a handful of matchups since they joined the league. It's because Carolina has dominated them on the glass. And look, it's going to look a little bit different tomorrow. You're not going to see Syracuse play extended possessions in the 2-3 zone. That is an adjustment from the Jim Boeheim era. They will play a little some man-to-man, as Bill Rafferty might say, whenever he's broadcasting a basketball game. Nonetheless, this is not a good rebounding team. And Carolina, Carolina's – maybe it's picky of me to say that we're solid because we average 40 boards per game, but we're only fourth in the league. It's something that I want more. I will always stress that until we're the number one team in rebounding, we can always improve at rebounding. But this has been a team that, for the most part, because you've got the big guys down low, you got Wilson, you got Nassar. You're getting about a combined 20 boards from those two dudes. Who's going to be that third guy? Who's going to be that guy that steps up and makes a difference in that category? When it comes down to rebounding, it's like we've always said, it comes down to pace. And it's kind of odd because I don't think his game is built to run. But since Derek Dixon's been put into the starting lineup, Carolina, I don't know if the tempo reflects it, but from watching them and I've seen them play in person, seen them play on TV since they made the point guard switch, they feel like they're playing faster. It feels like when Dixon, when we get a defensive rebound and Dixon gets the ball, we're not walking it up the court. We're making that outlet pass. We're making that skip ahead pass. We're getting into our action a lot quicker and getting to the pace where I think Hubert Davis wants to play at. He talks about wanting to be the fastest team from foul line to foul line, but the numbers say we're playing at the slowest pace since the Bill Guthridge era. But if you have the ball, you can play at your pace. You dictate tempo. You do all those things. And you saw the other day that when Carolina got the ball, they ran. They were looking to run. They got 16 more fast break points. That's kind of where you're used to seeing this program live from a transition point per game total. So they're not good at rebounding, so you should be able to expose them on the offensive glass, get some second chance points, but it also comes down to pace. And as we've seen over the years with Syracuse, they don't have the athletes, they don't have the athleticism to keep up with Carolina. We get this game in the open floor. This should be a game that Carolina got to put away early in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, that was my point that I was making when we were talking about being strong on the inside. I think Carolina just getting out and running in this game will certainly make things a little bit easier to get some of those easy baskets. And I think that Carolina should be able to dominate the pace in this game because, as you mentioned, they should be able to dominate the glass. This is not a good rebounding team for Syracuse. They really have two guys that can rebound the basketball in Donnie Freeman and William Kyle III. That's it. I mean, the rest of this group, they not a great rebounding team by any stretch of the imagination, and they play really small. I mean, they don't have another guy on the team that averages more than 3.9 rebounds per game, and that's Nate Kings. So that tells you that this is a team that really just cannot rebound altogether. It's one of the worst rebounding teams in the ACC, and one of the worst in the country at 224th. And so Carolina should be able to take advantage of that. They're not a team that does well on the offensive glass. 10.8 per game. That's something that Carolina will love to see. That should be a breath of fresh air for Carolina, not playing a team that's a good offensive rebounding team, and should allow Carolina to dominate the defensive boards. And if they're able to do that, that should allow them to control the pace of the game, and should really make this a game that Carolina should be comfortable in for the most part. I mean, yeah, in terms of the offensive rebounds on the other end, Carolina should be able to pull some of those down. Syracuse is allowing 12.1 offensive rebounds per game. That's 331st in all of college basketball. So that tells you right there that Carolina should be able to exploit them on the glass. I'm thinking probably somewhere in that plus 10, plus 12 margin at the least for Carolina in this game. That's what you should be looking for if this team is locked in and ready to go for this matchup against the Orange.
All right, Carolina enters the game with an 81.4% chance to win. That's according to ESPN's matchup predictor. They opened up as a 9.5-point favorite according to DraftKings. That line has now moved up a point to 10.5 with the over-under set at 157.5. I'll let you go first, buddy. Who wins the game and why?
I think Carolina wins the game, and I think they win it pretty handedly. I think the way that they've been playing offensively carries over into this matchup against Syracuse. I think they're going to be prepared to go in both areas, really, of the game, but especially on that offensive end. I think Carolina is going to be locked in and ready to go. I know Syracuse is going to test them a little defensively with some of the numbers that they've put up this season. I mean, they are holding opponents to just 69.9 points per game. Their 2-point field goal percentage allowed is 56th in the entire country. So they've done a really good job in that area, and they've done a really good job of running teams off of the 3-point line. But that means that teams are able to shoot the ball a lot from inside the arc against them. That's an area that Carolina, we know, can succeed when you've got Caleb Wilson and Henry Vassar. I just don't know if they're going to have answers for those guys in this game. And I think Luka Bogavac is going to be able to bring something on the perimeter with what he's been doing here recently. Don't expect a huge 3-point shooting night from Carolina in this game because of what Syracuse will be able to do. But I do think that Carolina really controls the areas that you need to, the glass, the pace of the game. And that's what allows Carolina to pick up a pretty safe and comfortable victory once again in this game against Syracuse.
I'm right there with you. I think Carolina wins. I think Carolina wins rather convincingly as well. They've got at least the two best players on the floor in this game with Wilson and Vassar. Maybe Sterling, Trimble, maybe those guys cancel. Starling and Trimble, maybe those guys cancel each other out. But regardless, we've seen what this matchup looks like the last handful of years. And I know we lost up there 2 years ago, but we lost on a night where they shot 64% from the field on contested 2-point shots. It's kind of hard to recreate that. I think Carolina wins. They're the best version of themselves at home. I think they'll be eager to kind of snap this streak of losing the game before the game, if you will. And I think Wilson. I think Wilson, who's now leading Carolina in points, rebounds, and assists, knows that if he's going to start to make his push for ACC Player of the Year, First Team All-America, maybe get in that conversation, being the National Player of the Year, it starts now. The calendar has turned to February. And I think he'll be motivated to build off another historic performance on Saturday against Georgia Tech. And I think, you get quality contributions from all the Carolina's role players, because I think quietly Hubert Davis has found his rotation, and he's found out who to play with who, and for how long. I think Carolina wins this one. I think they do so going away. No matter what happens, we'll have you covered on the website, That's HeelToughBlog.com. Preview will go up tomorrow morning, as has been the custom all season long. Previews go up the day of the game, depending on who's where and who's doing what. The recap may be available for you guys tomorrow night. If not, it'll be up first thing on Tuesday as we continue to take you through the basketball season. You know, Anthony has you covered on anything Carolina football, kind of the calm before the storm, but before you know it, we'll be getting you ready for the start of spring practice for Bill Belichick's second season in Chapel Hill. All that great coverage, HeelToughBlog.com. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcast and will pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer, the best way to follow us is on Facebook at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. The second that we go live, you'll be notified. You can jump in and be a part of the conversation. The hope is that by Tuesday, whenever we recap the Syracuse game, I will be feeling and looking the part to be back on camera with you guys, as opposed to just looking at a blank screen to listen to me talk out of my yin-yang. But that's the best way to keep with us on the video editions, where we've seen a lot of growth this basketball season. With that, folks, that is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.